Okay. Hey everybody. So my name is Kelsey. I'm a professor here at DiviNation Academy, and that is who we're doing class with here tonight. If you are just meeting us for the first time, welcome. We are so excited to have you. I'm going to give you a little bit of like disclaimers and kind of housekeeping about us first. So all the ways to find us are first, I'm going to pop into the chat the link to our YouTube channel. Eventually this class will be recorded. Since it's being recorded, it will be posted on there. And then we have a ton of classes that are on there as well. And I think we're like over 100 right now. Lots of fun topics, so definitely go and check that out. Also, another place that you can find us and get information and resources is also going to be our website, which I'll pop into the chat now. On there is where our student pages are for our students that register for the Academy. That's where you can find information about our certification programs we offer, our apprenticeships we offer, study guides, resources for books. Like there's so much resources on there. So definitely take a look at that. And then the third thing I'm going to pop in here for you guys is going to be our Facebook page. This is like the #1 way to get in touch with us. If you want to enroll in the Academy after class tonight, which I hope you do, and we would love to have you, shoot us a message there. Our admins will reach out to you and then get you enrolled. We have an awesome Facebook community. That's how you know about all of our classes. That's how you can attend, all that fun stuff. Fabulous. So that's about DiviNation Academy. Now, the other housekeeping that I always do before I start is a little bit about me. I'm Kelsey. I am a new professor here at the Academy. I'm absolutely thrilled and overjoyed to be here with you guys. I am a grade practitioner, so I always put that out there. So I practice from both sides of the path. I practice in duality. My magic and my stuff is also very ceremonial. It's very folk-based. It's very nature-based energy, and I work with multiple different deities and entities. If you haven't seen me in the Dark Goddess classes and haven't experienced me yet, definitely come check us out on Sunday. I will be invoking deities for you that day. And then my other disclaimer I always put before I start everything is everybody has their own path. Just because what I say tonight, if it doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine. You don't have to take away from everything that I say. Some things I will put in here, I'll let you know this is how I view it, and you don't have to take it that way, and I will never be offended. So just know everybody has their own path, and that's the absolute beauty of being in this path with witchcraft and magic and paganism and all that fun stuff. So let's get started with our topic tonight. So this is the first in my new series on magical and witchcraft basics. So in this series, it's going to be pretty much anything you guys want to discuss. Like I said, I have an incredibly extensive background on multiple topics, multiple paths, multiple pantheons. So literally any topic you guys want something on, shoot it at me in the chat, shoot it at me on the page, and we can possibly go over it. So today we're going to be doing shadow work. I chose shadow work first. For one, it is absolutely essential as a magical practitioner. You will never be able to fully experience your full capability, your full potential. You will never be able to fully awaken if you don't do this. If you choose to completely go with just the love and the light path, you will definitely get things out of it, but you will never fully get all that you can out of it. So that's a big reason why I want to bring this up. Another reason is because as a collective, I feel like this is something we are lacking in doing shadow work as a collective. The collective has a shadow as well, and we are very much ignoring it as a collective and as magical practitioners. And I feel like I really want to bring that to light so that we can start focusing on that more, because we can do a lot more for the world with that. And the other reason why, big reason why I'm doing this is if you are attending my Dark Goddess devotional classes, this is going to be absolutely essential for you to ever be able to invoke any deities, for you to be able to make contact with any of the dark goddesses. You are going to need to have a foundation in this. So this is going to be super, super important for you. So where we're starting, so first disclaimer, I also want to put the shadow work. Everybody can do it, but I want to very, very much set the preface. If you are experiencing like severe depressive episodes right now, if you are having suicidal ideation or self-harm urges, please don't attempt shadow work yet. You need to have a little bit more of a stronger base of self-love before you do that, because you are going to go really deep into traumas. You are going to go really deep into parts of yourself you don't trust and that you haven't touched before. Like I said, everybody can do this. And if those things are part of your life, I'm not saying that you can't do it at all, but I want you to have a little bit stronger of a self-love before you really tackle this. I have my own mental health disorders. I've dealt with suicidal ideation, and I've been working with shadow work. So it's not that you can't. You just need to I want to make sure that you feel comfortable enough with a strong enough base, because you will have to touch on those traumas before you do this. So make sure you think about that too before you go into this. Okay, so with all that out of there, what is your shadow? I kind of briefly touched on this in my archetype class if you were there, so you have a little bit of a beginning with that. If you weren't there, so this actually started in psychology. This came out of a psychology concept. It was created by Carl Jung. He was a Swiss psychologist. He created this theory about archetypes, and that we all as a collective will end up residing within a certain type of archetype. And it helps us understand ourselves better. It helps us understand the people we interact with better. It helps us understand the world better. I'm not going to go into archetypes much more than that, because like I said, I did like a whole 2-hour class on that. So if you haven't seen that, definitely jump back and watch that when it's up. But the shadow self came out of that, because what he also noticed is that we have two sides to us. We have the side that we show and we portray to everybody, and we have the side that we choose to keep hidden. And that is what we refer to as our shadow self. He liked to call it your dark side. I personally don't like using that verbiage, because I don't view the world that way. I don't look at things as good, bad, dark, ugly. I just look at it as energy. So that's why I say, like, it's just ourself that we keep hidden. It's ourself is our part of ourself that's unknown to us. It's the things that we choose not to present to others. It's literally everything that's behind that mask. It's everything that's deep down that we don't want to deal with. And because it ends up hidden, and usually what ends up happening with it is it ends up causing damage and pain to us and others in our life. And it can show up in a lot of different ways. We'll go over that a little bit more in detail, but some of the most basic ways that you'll probably notice it is like if you have explosive rage out of nowhere, things are making you angry and you just have no idea why. Hatred towards things that you're just like, I have no clue. Greed, selfishness, jealousy, judgmentalness, that's a huge one we'll go over, and projection, that's another huge one that we'll go over. So those kind of things will start to really negatively impact your life and show up a lot if you don't pay attention to your shadow and you start to ignore it. So those are things that are also included within your shadow and your shadow self. So why the shadow work is super, super important. You'll get to know more about what the shadow is more as we go too. So that's kind of why I'm giving you kind of a brief rundown right there, because we're going to go so in depth on what your shadow is while we're talking about all this. But why your shadow work is so important is because our shadow selves, because they're hidden, a lot of times they become so subconscious to us. They become so deep and quiet. We don't even notice when they're negatively affecting us. They end up so good at negatively affecting us that we just don't notice until it's almost too late and we can't fix the damage without having a lot of fallout. So it's super important to work with that so that you can start to become aware of when those things are happening sooner. So then you can react better. You can be able to interact with people around you better. You can interact with yourself better. You can get to know yourself better. And you can become the best version of yourself as well. So working with this helps you know when you're starting to kind of slide in, go down that kind of slope of negative behavior that will negatively impact your life, so that you can stop that from happening as often. And then your life will end up having more joy in it, and you'll end up being able to manifest more. And it'll also, like, being aware of it will stop you from projecting onto others. It's a huge thing that we all do. Every single one of us do. We do it constantly all the time. And I'll go kind of over more what projection is, but pretty much briefly what projection is it's putting what you think of yourself onto somebody else. So it is you, your insides, your shadow self is literally like, you're not paying attention to me, fine. I'm going to show you that this is what's coming up for you. This is who you are in another person. So that's kind of what projecting is. You can project actually reality, like you can be projecting and it actually be the reality of that person at the same time, but more often than not, it's not. more often than not when you're projecting on somebody, that's not the actual reality that's going on, which then is what negatively impacts you and your interpersonal communications and your interpersonal relationships. Some awesome benefits of shadow work. I've been doing shadow work I didn't start it right away when I first started. I feel like most people don't. Most people, when we start practicing magic and we start going the paganism path, we really focus on like the light, enlightenment, the love, the joy. We focus on all of that stuff when it comes to that. I started shadow work probably about 3 years in, so I've probably been doing it for very extensively for 12, 13 years now. It's a part of my everyday life. I do it for the collective. I do it for myself. I do it for myself for multiple topics. I actually just went to go peek at my shadow work books for the year, and I think I'm up to 9. I filled up in 9 entire bullet journals so far. But shadow work is amazing. The benefits that you get from it is if you want to grow spiritually, if you want to grow magically, if you want to grow towards enlightenment, if you want to grow towards your most authentic self, if you want to figure out your soul contract, if you want to be able to have access to the Akashic records, if you want to be able to overcome traumas, those are all the benefits of shadow work. Those are what you can get out of it. That is the access that you get to it. You go through this shadow work, you go through this muck, you go through this darkness, you bring everything from the dark external to yourself, you bring it to light, you fully blend it and become, I'm going to use the phrase owning your shadow self. And I don't mean that in a possessive way. I mean it in a prideful, like this is who I am, blending wholly as a person way. So when you own your shadow like that, like you get all those amazing benefits. It helps you find your purpose in your life, like I said, and your soul contract. You end up having way more courage for the unknown. I personally, this not only helps me in my magical practice, in my spiritual practice, but also mental health wise. Shadow work is amazing mental health wise. It will help you in so many areas in that. It helps you with deepening love and respect and acceptance for yourself and for others. It helps you be able to improve your relationships with others because you're more aware, like I said, of when you're projecting. You're more aware of when those negative patterns are starting to butt their head. You're more aware of how you are reacting to others and why. And because you know the why, you can redirect that behavior more. You end up having more increased empathy and compassion for others, and you end up having better mental and physical health. I don't know how many times like I've heard it and I didn't believe it for so long, but if you improve your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health is gonna follow in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying like it's a miracle and it's gonna cure everything, but in some way, shape, or form, like you are gonna notice your physical self start to get better. And you are going to notice that to start come forward. You're going to be able to get a much more clear perception of the world around you. You're going to be able to find out how you truly feel about the universe and the multiverse and how you feel your place in it is. You're also going to be able to access much more creativity. When I started doing shadow work, I started being able to do artistic abilities I never thought I could do. I literally couldn't even like barely draw a stick person. And now there's like so many more things that I just love to do now because that expression just comes out in a very different way for me. And I've a lot of people that I know say that all of a sudden this just massive creative thing flares up. You also be able to unlock your psychic abilities a lot more. And you're going to be able to understand how your connection to each clairs is. If you want more information on that, by the way, our professor Danielle has an amazing video as well on shadow work that has to do with psychic sensitivity. She's got amazing classes on there. I'm doing my private apprenticeship with her. She's amazing. So definitely check that out as well. She goes over shadow work in a little bit different way than I do, and it's amazing. And then another amazing thing about shadow work is it helps you find the root cause of your traumas. A lot of times you may think that you know the root cause of your trauma, what actually caused it, and you really don't. You actually really don't, because it may be that you think that this trauma is tied to this smell, but then when you really look at it, no, this trauma is actually tied to this smell, and this is what's triggering. So that is something as well for benefit that you get out of this. When it comes to shadow work, when you first start, you may have a hard time recognizing when it is your shadow self that's speaking to you, because it is a different entity. That's the best way that I can describe that. I'm very aware of my shadow self. They are a different entity. They are a different being, like with inside of me. I even know what their name is. I respond to them. I call them by their name. Like that is a relationship I have cultivated with my shadow self at this point. And if you have just started, it can take a really long time to differentiate like what that is. If that's your shadow self speaking to you, or if it is something else coming in. If it's your negative thoughts, if it is you have mental illnesses like I do, if that was like a thought pattern that was coming in. It was very hard for me to differentiate at first. So some ways that you can kind of like spot that it's the shadow self rather than anything else is it's gonna feel a lot like you're gonna notice projection more. Like you're gonna really sit there and be like, is this me? Is it them? Is this something else? And you're gonna feel like really unwanted feelings about other people for no reason. Like you're going to be sitting in that shadow work prompt and you're going to feel incredibly unwanted feelings about that individual and you're going to be confused as to why. Pay attention to that. That's your shadow self letting you know that there's an emotion that you have not been paying attention to. There's something that you've not been paying attention to. So pull on that thread. When I mean pull on that thread, it may look different for everybody. It may be just having a conversation with your shadow self. It may be that you can actually physically see that thread and you literally start pulling on that thread until you get to the location that your shadow self is bringing you to. You can hear your shadow self possibly maybe say something to you. It may come to you in images. So it just really pay attention to like how that unwanted feeling is responding to you. And then another way that it'll show up is that you start to become really critical of others and very judgmental. Mm-hmm. A lot of times how I notice when that's happening is I find myself repeatedly saying that other people are being judgmental. That's a judgment. Saying that other people are being judgmental is you also being judgmental. So if you are starting to consistently feel like everybody around you is being judgmental or things are coming off as very judgmental and you feel like words are coming at you and attacking you and it's becoming a very consistent theme in your life, pay attention to that. Start to use the shadow prompts that I have within here because pick out different ones and start to use one that will work for you and ask your shadow self, like, why? Like, why am I being so judgmental? That is your shadow self speaking to you. They're letting you know that like this is a function. This is something you need to pay attention to. Another thing is if all of a sudden your temper becomes very, very quick. Your temper, like a drop of a hat. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, your temper is just explosive. Things are just making you irritated. You're overstimulated all the time. All of a sudden, you're looking like, for example, I mean, the other day, my son started mixing together his Play-Doh in different colors, and I got so mad. I literally was like, why am I so angry about this? And I went and I had to sit in some shadow work prompts for a while to figure out my OCD triggers were starting to get escalated and I needed to relook at that. So that is something to look at as well if you start getting really explosive for things and you don't understand why. Another way that your shadow self will start to pop up is you feel like you're a victim all the time. You feel like you are a victim all the time. Things start to feel like you are living in victimhood. You can never get out of things. You feel like you're drowning, things like that. I want to preface this mental health can be, I totally get it. I've been through it. Depression is part of that feeling, but this is like, you feel like a victim simply because somebody cut you off in the road and to cut you off in the road in a different lane. It could be you feel like a victim simply because you went to the grocery store and there's a specific brand of pasta you like to buy and it's all gone and you can't buy it now. So the world's out to get you. So things like that, like if it's getting really excessive like that, pay attention to that. Go to your shadow self, start acting that is your shadow self reaching out to you and letting you know, like, I need you to come to me. I need you to understand like what this function is. Another thing is if you start to lack boundaries, and if you get really aggressive with your boundaries. So it can swing both ways. So if you start to not be able to say no to anybody, you start to really obsessively people please. And then on the other end of it, if you start literally just having very strict boundaries, you are just like cutting everybody off. You have it to where like, nope, you don't do this, no compromise. I'm not doing anything. We're done. And it's kind of like with everything and everybody, and it's showing up a lot. Go to your shadow self. Ask them, what is going on? Do I need to change my boundaries? Is there a very important relationship that I have no boundaries in that now the rest of my life it's showing up somewhere else and I'm getting resentful with others? So start to like look to your shadow self and ask that. Another way it can show up to spot your shadow self, that your shadow self's really trying to reach out to you and talk to you. Repetitive and addictive behavior. That's all addictive behavior. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to go into that much more. If you have an addiction with anything, that includes caffeine. By the way, people, caffeine's a drug. People forget that. That is a drug. that includes as an addiction. So if you drink pop all the time, like me, that is an addiction. So if that is something you really need to look at, kind of like why. So again, go to your shadow self. That is them showing up in your life, letting you know there is something that you don't have the coping skills for, and that is becoming your coping skills. So figuring out how we can work with our shadow self to find a different coping mechanism. Then the last way that I have that comes up on here is you completely flat out deny feeling certain emotions. So, for example, like you're having a conversation with somebody, like you are very, very visibly getting passionate, getting like heated, getting upset, getting angry, like they can visibly see it. And you are like, nope, 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 nope. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. And you continuously deny it and you won't even acknowledge that that's happening. You need to go to your shadow self. You need to go to your shadow self. You need to ask your shadow self why that emotion is so scary for you to deal with. Because it's popping up, it's serving a function for you. You do need to look at it, but you need to figure out why your shadow self is like why you are being so unwilling to look at it and why you're so afraid of it. Okay. So the next, I guess I'll take a minute. I haven't asked yet. Any questions so far? Take that as a no. And am I talking too fast? I'm trying really hard to slow down. If I am, just please let me know. I know I'm a fast talker. Okay, so the next chunk that I have in here, for your study guide, I'm not gonna go. Okay, yeah, what's your question? Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, did I just have a brain fart? Oh, okay. My question. Am I hearing, I'm listening to you in my earpiece. So am I hearing you say ask your shadow selves, plural?
So I am, but that's different for me. So shadow self. Most people have one shadow self. I do have multiple personalities, so it's a little bit different for me. But most people
Okay.
do only have one shadow self.
I just wanted to clarify because I'm listening in my earbud.
Yes. Yes, I may have slipped up and said that because of my own personal experience, but yes, most people do only have one shadow self.
Thank you.
No, thank you for asking because I
Oh,
definitely probably
how do
slipped
we
up.
know if we have more than one?
If you know that you have more than one, that's a very complicated thing to go over. That's a good question though. So how you know if you have more than one, it's kind of the same way as how you know if you have more than one personality. They're
Okay.
very distinctive people within your brain.
Okay. I
It's
get
not,
it. Say no more.
yeah,
I get it. I
yeah, it's a little bit more
I
than that.
wasn't probing
Yeah,
for I get it. It
yeah.
just took me a second. I'm a
Nope,
chocolate blonde, so excuse me.
you are totally fine. And you can always message me too, and I can go into it way more depth personally too. I have no problem doing
Sounds good. Thank you.
that. You're welcome. Any other questions? Fabulous. Okay, so the next chunk of our study guide is how to do shadow work for beginners. Let's see, I think I put quite a few in there. What did I put in here? 8. I put 8 different techniques in here for you guys. I'll kind of briefly run through them here, and then I'll let you guys kind of ask any questions if you have any. But I did put pretty detailed instructions in the study guide of how to do it all, how to work with your shadow self. So first is pretty much just observing your emotional reactions. A lot of people kind of just let their emotions happen. They don't actually observe what their emotional reactions are, what's causing their emotional reactions, and what happened around them. Another thing that's super important with this is noticing how your body feels when you're feeling these emotions. Your body is going to tell you what emotion you're going to feel before you actually feel. Your body is going to give you a physiological symptoms, physiological sign of what your emotion is going to be feeling about 2 to 3 minutes before you actually experience that emotion. And you realize that you're experiencing that emotion. Is it possible to help you? Yeah, yes, yes, it is 1,000%. I wish that they taught children how to do shadow work. I wish that they taught them how to do self-care because this would be a massive part of it. You can definitely do this before then. I wish I would have. in some shape or form, like doing kind of like mental health journaling is kind of a way of shadow work. But this is much more intentional because as I get into this, this isn't just sitting down and journaling. This is you are in a sacred space. You are literally going inwards to yourself. You like, this isn't just journaling and asking questions. Like this is a very meditative, intentional, energetic practice. So if they are totally comfortable with learning that, it's something that they want to learn, and you're not like trying to push it onto them. I'm all for that. All for that. And I could actually probably create some type of study guide and put it on the website about that. That actually is probably a good idea. So I'll add that when I'm creating my website page, my page for the website for my classes this weekend. So I will create a separate thing for kids. I'll do it probably while I'm at work tonight. Okay. Oh, I love that. Oh, that makes me so happy. Oh, I love that. Oh, the things that they have access to now too that we didn't, it just makes me so happy that they have access to it. Like they have access to so much more information than we had access to, and it just makes me so happy for them. Because they're able to figure out who they are so much sooner, and I just love it. Okay, so back to how to do shadow work for beginners. So we were talking about observing your emotional reaction. Like I said, most people don't actually, they just kind of like let their emotions happen. They don't actually fully observe. And to start doing this, I recommend writing them down. Like I literally recommend tracking them. When I first started it, I did a mood tracker daily so that I would like literally I had certain emotions and I would make sure that I would rate at the end of the day what my peak for that specific emotion had been, what I thought caused that peak to be, and then I would reflect on if there was anything around me that I thought could have triggered me in any of my five senses and what my body was feeling at the time. It works better to do that in the moment, but you can do it in a reflective way as well. I think when I first started, I was tracking about 10 different emotions. I think now I still track like 7 daily. It also really helps you at the end of the day understand that if you really thought that you had a really horrible day, you actually maybe didn't. It was maybe just a really small pocket of space that was horrible. So it also helps you sit in gratitude and helps you work with your shadow self as well with that. Um, so just really observing your emotional reactions and being really intentional about it. And then going and doing the shadow work afterwards later when you're in sacred space. And like I said, I'm going to go over that in just a little bit on what that means and how to set that up with the intention of the shadow work. But just making sure that you're going into actual shadow work with the sacred space with the intention of actually figuring out like, why did you react that way? How did that make you feel emotionally? Did you notice a pattern? And can you connect this to something else that's been going on? And if you can, how are we going to problem solve it? Because there's really only 4 ways to problem solve in life. And it's you either stay miserable, you decide that you want to feel differently about the situation, you change the situation if you can, or you simply just leave. So that is kind of also why you're looking at this to figure out like, how can I connect these episodes to how I can problem solve to where this doesn't keep showing up in my life. Yes, that is an amazing free one. Also, if you go on Pinterest, there are so many printables of mood trackers, and you can like customize them to any way that you want and any emotion that you want, different shapes. And sometimes I even have like different themes for different months, and it's amazing. But yes, I love that mood tracker too. I do that. So the next one that I have in here is recreating your dreams. I personally can't speak much to this. I hear that has a lot of success for other people, and I put in how I have learned from other people, how they have done it, how my teachers have tried to teach how to do it. I just personally can't speak on this one too much because I simply don't dream. I literally never have my entire life. It's not something I do or have access to. So it's just not a skill. This just isn't a skill that I can use for shadow work. But I hear that it absolutely is amazing. It really, really can help you guys a lot. So what I hear is just every morning making sure right away when you wake up that you're writing down anything that you can remember from your dream, specifically making sure that you're focusing on the 5 senses, and like any like interpersonal interactions that you had. So anything that you had interactions we had with other people and who those people were. So then you can be able to reflect in shadow work by having an imaginary dialogue with them and recreating what had happened in that dream while you are in shadow work and in that sacred space, in your container and in that meditative space. But again, like I said, I can't speak too much on this one. I would definitely reach out. I mean, I have some teachers I will add for resources that's on my page that you can reach out to them and they can get you some more information on this. Like I said, I've tried, but it's just not something I can do. So I just don't have personal experience on that one. The next one that I have on here is discovering your shadow archetype. So I kind of briefly touched on these in the archetype class, but every major archetype also has a shadow archetype because, of course, we have a shadow self. So doing the shadow work to figure out what that actual archetype is that you most connect to. So then that you can figure out what shadow prompts are going to work best for you, how you need to do your shadow work, what methods are going to work best for you, and what you really need to focus on for being able to uncover your soul contract and things like that with this archetype. Because when I get to this, your shadow self is not just your shadow self, like there's a golden version of your shadow self, and this shadow archetype helps you get there. It helps you create that path to be able to get to that most authentic, balanced, all in duality version of yourself. So the shadow archetypes I have listed on here, I'll just kind of run through them super quick. I put 12 on there, but I want to put the disclaimer that there are so many more. There are hundreds more. There can be hundreds more. They can pop up in any way, shape, or form in multiple combinations. These are just the most common, and these are the ones that were created by Carl Jung, who developed this theory. So he has the ruler, which they're power sick, egocentric, and they have a lot of pride. They chase money and success, and they engage in destructive behaviors. You have the caregiver. They play the victim all the time. They have problems saying no. They guilt trip you, and they have a huge issue with feeling inadequate, which leads to anger, resentment, and frustration. You then have the everyman. They're super manipulative. They're very afraid to be left out. They have huge FOMO issues. They're super codependent. They want to fit in, and they pretty much, because they want to fit in, have no sense of identity. They become a chameleon and turn into kind of like whoever they need to fit in. Then you have the creator, which is the perfectionist. They lack stability and comfort. They have a hard time accepting things for what they are, and they have an incredibly hard time being able to control their emotions because you can't control life, and they want absolute control of life. The innocent, which they lack responsibility. They are absolutely inclined to follow and obey, even at harm to themselves. They ignore reality, so they will avoidance, like no other. They are very naive and they tend to like to blame other people for their problems and not take responsibility for their actions. Next, you have the explorer. They feel lost and unfulfilled. They are a danger seeker. They're super prone to addiction. They seek excitement all the time. They're super restless. They move from one place to another without any plan. They don't plan ahead. They are just gone. They don't care like if they have a safety net to fall on, they're just gonna go. The warrior, they create chaos. They never ever learn their lesson. They always want to be stuck in unwanted situations. They're super immature. They depend on others to make their decisions because they just simply can't do it. They really like to stay in their comfort zone. Like they really, really like to be in their comfort zone. You then have the outlaw. It's the same shadow traits as the warrior. The only kind of different thing is that they complain all the time that they want things to change, and they're very, very vocal about complaining and wanting things to change, but they will never actually do anything about it. Then you have the magician. They're detached. They're feeling unsatisfied with what they have. They're super overcritical. They can get paranoid about things. They can get trapped in like conspiracy theories. They're very skeptical. They cannot trust others around them. Then you have the lover. They're not in touch with their feelings. They lack self-love. They're prone to addiction. They're destructive. They have super destructive behaviors. They struggle to form relationships. They're obsessive, and they can be super dependent on their other people and other things. You also have the jester, super dishonest with others. They're trapped in their emotions. They're really immature. They have self-sabotaging behavior all the time. Like they are constantly doing anything they can to destroy the things that are good in their life. And they can be obnoxiously annoying. Like it's obnoxious. And the sage, they're obstinate, they're opinionated, they're impossible to reason with. Like you don't want to argue with the sage. Like you're not gonna win. Like you're literally not going to win. Even if you're right, you're not gonna win. They end up being a loner very often and end up being by themselves, and they can be super, super arrogant. What did Andrea doing? What about the narcissist? That I've seen as a shadow archetype. I don't include that one because I personally feel like narcissist is being massively overused right now, and way too many people are using that for behavior that's not narcissistic. It's just somebody just simply being a dick. Um, and so I didn't include that one, but that is a shadow archetype that I do see often. I just personally don't like to use it because I feel like it's massively overused. Um, if you want to put the like narcissist in here, I would put the narcissist with the ruler, honestly. Because narcissists are very egocentric, they're very power sick, they have a ton of pride. Narcissists engage in massive destructive behavior because they don't care about what happens to anybody else around them. And most of the narcissists that I know, they are very stuck on money. Very, very, very stuck on money. So I would tie that in with the ruler for what I have here. But like I said, I just personally, as a collective, I just don't like how often that word's being used. I think it's being massively misused. So that's why I didn't put that on there. Okay. So the next option, the next way to do shadow work for beginners, outside of the three that we've already discussed, is having a dialogue with your shadow self. Like legit having a dialogue with your shadow self. So when I go into my sacred space, when I go into my container, when I go into the purpose of doing shadow work, when I have lit my incense, set my candles, when I have my crystals where they need to be, when I've set my intention, when I have used my mantra, and I am ready to go into my meditative state for shadow work. I am literally going in it with the intention of I am full on having a conversation with my other half. I am full on having a conversation with my shadow self. I am going into it to where I am entering into my sacred space internally while I have my energetic container externally around us to make sure that we're protected and that we are ready to like be together. But I go into my internal space. I have a specific room within my internal space that I meet with my shadow self. And we literally sit and we literally converse with each other. We are conversing like we are friends and pals or in a therapy session. And it is literally having a dialogue back and forth. You do not respond until your shadow self responds to you. Like it's literally having an actual conversation with them. It's asking them to be willing to have a conversation with you. It's asking them to be willing to be vulnerable with you and to feel safe enough with you that you are willing to actually fully accept what they're about to say to you. Because that's the other thing. You need to make sure that you are going to accept what they have to say to you. You're probably not going to like it. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be painful. It's going to be something that you may not want to deal with, but they are there so that you can fully enlighten, so that you can fully awaken, so you can be your full authentic self to your full potential. They are a part of you. Like they are there to be with you. Like you will not get there without them. So like you want to go with them with the utmost like openness and make sure that like if you aren't there yet, we're not ready for shadow work. So we need to do more meditation work until we fully feel like we are open to receive whatever they come to us. Because if you shut them down, it's going to be very hard for them to want to dialogue with you again. If they come to you with what they're ready to say, if they come to you with this dialogue and their vulnerability is to be able to help you enlighten and you reject that, that is going to do a lot of damage to that relationship. So make sure that you are ready, willing, and able to be open with them when you have this dialogue with them. Another way to do shadow work for beginners is simply through meditation. If you don't know how to meditate, I did put like a super easy, simple one using the square breathing. A lot of people like the square breathing. That's why I use that one specifically. If you do know how to meditate, however you meditate, everybody has their own way that they do it. Everybody has their own sacred space and container that they create when they're doing it. But it's literally being in the meditated state with the intention of going to your shadow self. So that's the other thing, making sure that that's the intention you're setting when you're going into that meditative state. And making sure that if you wander, like it's totally okay. Like accept that you're wandering while you're in meditation and just pull yourself back to your shadow self. Just ask your shadow self to pull yourself back. Ask your shadow self to make sure that you're present for this conversation. If you do kind of like veer a little bit, So meditation and then keeping a journal is another way to do shadow work. Like I said, I just went and looked. I've got 9 that I've completed for this year. Might be a little obsessive, but like I said, I do shadow work for many reasons. But by journaling, you end up developing like a very, very self-aware, very like your self-awareness, I feel like just becomes stronger. When you like, there's so much scientific proof and evidence that when you physically write something, it also like goes into your memory more. You're able to remember it better, remember it longer, and things like that. So that's also why I like the journaling part, because it also puts it into your memory and it also is reminding yourself like this is an intention, like this is part of your day, this is part of your practice, this is part of your life. And so like it commits that to memory that you want to keep going back to this and the reason for why you're doing this. That's something that like I've also noticed as well with me doing the journals. Like I'm able to go back and look and see how my prompts have changed. And it reminds myself of why I'm doing this very difficult, hard, heavy work and to keep going. It gives you the motivation, the inspiration to keep going. Because like I said, I'm not gonna lie, like this is hard, heavy work. Like it is hard, heavy work. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of commitment. This isn't something that you kind of can just dabble in. And then let's see, I think I did put some basic shadow work prompts in there with for you to start with. Most of them are kind of, like I said, they're pretty basic. So it's like, what parts of my life am I struggling most? What emotions are you trying to avoid? Do I have certain situations that specifically trigger me? Do I know what my worst side is? Do I know anything about my shadow self already? Has my shadow self kind of been nudging at me and I haven't really been paying attention? And now I think that it might be this. Is one of the shadow archetype more affected by being able to take on others' ailments, actual physical? I don't know if that's specifically tied to an archetype, to be honest. I don't know if that's tied to a shadow archetype. I feel like that's going to be tied more to a psychic layer. Okay. Can you just respond to chat? Are you okay if I write this down and I come back to you with this after class? Probably tomorrow. I have an idea, but I don't want to give an answer without looking at one specific text I have in mind that can answer this for you. So if you're okay and comfortable with that, just let me know. Because yeah, there's actually a specific text I want to go look at after this. I can see exactly where it is on my shelf that might actually have an answer for you. And I think this is tied to Claire. So I'm gonna look at that. Okay. And then when you're doing the journaling, one thing that I have heard, I've noticed from speaking to other people when they started doing shadow work, they feel like there's a right or wrong way to do it, and they think really too hard about doing it. And when they're doing their shadow work and they're working on these prompts, they aren't just letting it flow. Don't think. It is literally when your shadow prompts, when you're doing your shadow work, it is literally what is intuitively coming to you from your shadow self. It is all intuition. Don't think about it, just write it down. Don't judge it, don't even think, just journal it. Just journal it. Don't analyze it while you're journaling it. You get to do that afterwards. Just let it out. So just let that pen flow, let that intuition flow, and let your shadow self speak through you. Another way that you can do this for beginners, beginning shadow work is inner child work. This one, I'm going to say, don't do this right away. This one, I want you to do one of the other ones first, but this is a great start. Everybody needs to do inner child work. Inner child work is a lot. It's a lot though. So since our shadow self, like they're literally created in our childhood. Is it normal? Yes, it is super normal to have more questions than answers. Yep, 1000%, Tanya. There's a lot of times I'll go into my shadow self and I'll be looking for a specific answer. And instead of getting an answer to that question at all, I walk out with 12 other questions for what was going on. And then I need to go back and do another session. So that's actually super, super, super normal. That's also why I write them down. That's also why I journal too, so that I can go back to those questions that pop up. Because it could also be that your shadow self is super confused about that and they have a question. So they're asking you that question to try to get an answer too. So that's also super, super big why I write them down. But yes, super, super normal. So like I said, inner child work. Our shadow selves are created when we're children. They're created by our experiences, they're created by our parents, they're created by conformity and societal norms and pressures. They're created by all of that. When you start doing this, later I'm gonna put more stuff in here for child work, for inner child work, because I'm going to do a class specifically on it. So I'll do more intensive shadow prompts for you guys. But if you choose to start this before then, simply just start with asking to meet your childhood, your inner child. Just simply ask. That's all you're going to ask. That's all you're going to do with shadow work, is you're just going to simply ask to meet your inner child. And your inner child may come to you at different ages at different times when you do this as well. For example, the very first time I ever started doing inner child work, my inner child showed up to me as 5. And then a couple years later, I was stuck at 15 for a very long time with inner child work. Lately, I've had stuff coming in actually from past lives of inner child work for me. Inner child work from past lives. So like that is also something that can pop up. Personally, I have a hard time with the thought that shadow self was created as children. I had an extremely happy childhood, but experienced trauma as an adult that seems to be the source of my shame. So your shadow self isn't just trauma, though. Your shadow self isn't just everything that's bad. Your shadow self is the stuff that's hidden to you. So it's your shadow self is literally just things that are hidden to you. It's yourself that you don't portray to everybody. Everybody has a version of themselves that doesn't come forward. Even as a child, that starts. Even if you have a super happy childhood, if you didn't experience a bunch of childhood trauma, like my son, he's having an incredibly happy childhood, something that's super, super different than mine. But his shadow self has already been created. There's been moments to where I'm sure like doubt has been created for him on who he is. I mean, my son's on the spectrum, so he has a hard time speaking. I definitely have moments to where I've gotten upset with him and I've created that, but he's still having an incredibly happy childhood. And he hasn't experienced any like excessive trauma yet. Because your shadow self, like I said, it's not bad, it's not evil, it's not all trauma. Is that where a lot of your traumas get stored? Yes. Your shadow self is literally just what's hidden to you. See you later, Andrea. They'll be recorded and added to YouTube. So see you later, and you can watch what you missed then. So that's why it is created in childhood, because like it's not even just your parents as well. Like you are shaped by every single person and interaction you have around you. At some point in time when you were a child, somebody made you feel something negatively. Somebody made you had a negative reaction. There's no way anybody went through childhood without one person making them feel a bad way. So that's the other reason why, like, I think I agree with him a lot with that and saying that it's created in childhood. Granted, my trauma is absolutely extensive, especially from childhood. So I also am coming from a different view and perspective, so that will also shape me as well. But I know a lot of people that had incredibly happy childhoods and their shadow self absolutely ran amok. Because of things that were repressed that they weren't dealing with even as teenagers, that they didn't realize had affected them as awesome. I'm glad it did. Yay, I'm glad it did. And like I said, I'm never ever trying to like argue or disagree with any of you. And I like if it doesn't resonate with you, totally fine. Everybody has their own path. My husband and I, we differ on so many things. Even when I get to duality, we differ even on that concept. So it's totally like I'm just answering your questions and responding to you. So next, for beginners work that you can do is really paying attention to your projection. And if you do that and where you're projecting on others, you can do this next skill, which is the mirror technique. I put this one in here because personally, I work with mirror magic extensively. It's kind of a controversial topic, I know, in the witchcraft world, and some people don't like using mirror magic. Some people don't like using black mirrors and scrying and things like that, but I love mirror magic. So if you are comfortable with doing mirror magic and using mirrors, this is one thing that I put in here for you. So this mirror technique, it's sort of a process of uncovering what your projections are if you're having a really hard time figuring out how you're projecting onto other people. Because if you think about it, other people are also just a mirror of us when we project onto them. So we're mirroring what we don't want to see in our shadow self is coming up in how we project with other people, what we're projecting onto those other people. So what I like to do with this, I put it in I have super detailed instructions, but kind of the brief rundown of how I do it is my mirror is anointed and sigiled and protected, but yours doesn't have to be when you start this. But like I said, I do a lot of mirror magic, so it's just like that. But you can use any mirror that you want. You can even use your bathroom mirror if you want. But I personally like to be seated. If you don't want to be, if you don't have to if you don't want to, but I like to be seated for this because I feel more grounded and connected to the earth when I'm doing it. I feel a little bit more centered doing that. But it is literally going to the mirror and you are literally asking the mirror and looking into the mirror with very, very much intention. With intention, you are making sure that you have created your sacred energy and your sacred container and your sacred space around you. And by the way, if you don't know how to do that, I'm going to be doing a class on that as well. So come to that if you don't know how to create an external energetic container yet. But you will do that. If you can't do that yet, like I said, just making sure that you are doing this with absolute intention. You are pulling all of your energy into what you're doing. With this, you are looking into that mirror and you are asking your shadow self and you are asking the mirror to project reality to you. That is all you're going to ask it to do at first. You are literally simply going to ask the mirror to project your reality to you. And then you are going to sit and you are going to watch what happens. Your body may move, your body may change. You may start to feel and experience physical emotions and physical sensations. Your facial expression may change. You may even see an image in the mirror and it may turn into scrying. Typically for me, I notice that my physiological sensations start to change when I'm doing this, and then I end up scrying. But when I'm specifically doing this, it's usually my physiological, like my triggers that I know will connect to an emotion will start. And then you are going to ask yourself, when that happens and you notice what that is this mine? Is this somebody else's? Or is this my shadow self? Or is this both of ours? And then you are going to wait for an answer. And then you are going to do your shadow work and prompts based on that answer. This technique is a way to make sure that you have intention and to physically connect to your body to be able to understand how you are projecting and what you're projecting to others. It also is connecting you, like I said, to that mirror magic and to be able to get that reflection of reality back to you. That's the brief rundown of how to do that. Like I said, I put really detailed instructions in the study guide of how to do this, and you guys can always ask me any questions on this. I'm probably going to do a class on mirror magic as well. That's my list of classes is so long now. But I'm probably going to do one on that because, like I said, I love it, and a lot of people don't use it, and I think it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to use and beautiful way to scry as well. And I want to, yes, okay, sidetracking there. Okay, so I'm going to stop now because that's all the basic techniques that I have there and ask if anybody has any questions. Don't worry, It's literally not something I do. You knew my schedule, trust me. It's just not what I do. When I get done here, I get to sleep for an hour and then I get to go to work for 10 hours and be up for 24 before I get to sleep for 3. That's literally my life. It's what I do and I love it. I thrive off of it. So don't worry. Okay, any questions? Okay. This next part, my favorite part. I feel like most people don't talk about this. I feel like this is a way missed opportunity when it comes to shadow work. I think I've had one of my teachers even touch on this, and I've studied with quite a few. I think I've only had one. But I absolutely love this concept. It got pulled and created from a couple different people. Young kind of started it. And then there is S. Wolf, who there's a couple books he's done as well on this topic, on shadow work specifically. And the golden shadow, really what it is it's pretty just means is that so Young once stated that he believed that the shadow is actually 90% pure gold. So our shadow self, there's actually only 10% of it that is just yuck. and the dark and the gunk and the muck and the trauma and like all of that. He actually truly believed that 90% of it actually was actually pure gold, and that's where our true authentic self sat, and that's how we become enlightened. That's how we become balanced, and that's how we end up like being able to have access to the Akashic records and all of that. So he, what that really meant to him and kind of how he looked at it is that there are so many beautiful gifts that are within our shadow selves that when we do this shadow work, that will just completely be opened, and we will be able to touch and unwrap and have access to, that if you don't do this, you're never going to be able to see. Um, and so that's kind of because, like I said before, like not everything in our shadow is all dark and doom and gloom and evil and trauma. It actually contains like some of our most powerful things, like when it comes to like artistic ability and sexual desire. Like I'm gonna do a class on sex magic too, because by the way, sex is super potent thing, and we like super go away from it, but like it's actually super important for us to be able to be enlightened and for us to have spiritual connection. Just like side note, like that's where our soul resides. Like our soul resides like in our pelvic area. So like when you're having sex, like that's your soul touching your partner's actual soul. So like this just that's a golden part of you. So like that's in your shadow self too, like your sexual desires, like your ability and desire for tribe and competition. Like competition isn't always like a bad negative thing. Like that can be a super awesome golden nugget part of yourself to be able to get you motivated in life and get you where you needed to be. Like being innovative, your intuitive psychic abilities a lot of them sit in your shadow self. Like you're not going to have full access to them until you work through that shadow self. um your golden shadow also represents your opportunity, your absolutely massive, tremendous opportunity for psychological and spiritual growth. Like that represents everything that you have to strive for. Your shadow self is holding all of that in there for you to find. Like that is why it's also like so important. Is like that is holding all of your potential. It is holding all of your potential for growth, all of your potential for oneness, all of your potential to be able to no longer like feel shame. It's holding all that potential to feel whole. It provides you that path. Like your shadow self provides you your path. It provides you where you need to go, how you need to get there, every little thing you need to work through. That is the path that you need to get to be able to hit spiritual enlightenment. That is what that golden self, that is what your shadow self is. That is, I think, sorry, I get super passionate about this part because like that is where all of that sits. Like that is where the yumminess of who you are is. And like I said, like it's terrifying. Like it is gonna be terrifying to go through. Like it's not easy, it's like heavy work, but when you get to like that golden place within there, like I legitimately see it. Like I legit see the gold. Like when I hit those places, like I legit like hear, feel, see like the gold when I get to those moments. So like when we're doing shadow work, like when you hit that first moment, like you're going to feel that. Like it is going to feel so overwhelming in such an amazing way. So that is something like I said, I wanted to touch on that part of that. And then what can happen when you reject your shadow self? A lot of negative things can happen. Like when you sit here and decide not to do it, when you sit here and not to do your shadow work, when you sit here to ignore it and not work with that. How do we control our triggers, especially when you know them but can only control reacting and reacting anger? I am going to ask that you reach out to me personally on that one. That covers a whole other thing. Outside of this that I personally can help you with. I can personally give you skills with that has nothing to do with this. Um, I went through DBT skills training from a mental health standpoint, and that's what's going to really help you with that. Question for how do you control your triggers? First, how you control them is you have to recognize them. And then you have to do a lot of brain rewiring to be able to control how you react to them and how you react to them with anger. And especially when they're reacting with little kids. The first step is, like I said, the shadow work part. Like I said, when you know what those triggers are, you then have to identify what specifically is causing those triggers. Because you may know what the specific triggers are, but you don't know what's actually causing the trigger. So for example, like for so long, like I knew like I was having a trigger for like my son, like whining and crying sometimes. And like I was getting super, super triggered. It was making me really angry and super overstimulated, like out of nowhere when I first had him. And like I thought that was the trigger, but it actually was like him crying, like wasn't the actual trigger. What actually triggered me was how I felt when he cried. So I had to understand like the feeling that he was making me feel when he cried about myself and then about my past childhood is what was triggering. It actually wasn't his action, it was what that action was causing. So that's also ties into the shadow work in that next step. Because you really need to identify like if what's causing that trigger, because the trigger is going to be there and that trigger is separate than what the cause is. That if that makes sense in like the simplest way that I can. But I really, really, really would love. Thank you. I am super, that's literally, I'm all about being authentic and transparent. Like nobody else is gonna get help or get better without it. I mean, but I've been, yeah, yeah. I could go on a whole thing on that. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying that. But I think I think is how it's pronounced. I'm hoping so. But I'm gonna ask you if you're comfortable with it, like if you can just personally reach out to me, I can really, really help you with that. I can even literally send you worksheets that can help you with that you can work through. So but like that's up to you. That's totally up to you. Okay. Because yeah, it's definitely you definitely don't want it affecting your kids. That's a huge reason why like shadow work is want to break those generational curses as well and those generational patterns and you don't want that for them. Okay, so let's see. What was I on? What happens when you reject your shadow self? Okay. So when you don't do it, like I said, you're not gonna fully awaken, you're not gonna fully experience what your full potential is. Your gifts, your powers, your magic, it's never gonna fully get there. Like I said, you can choose not to do this and you're still gonna get that. You're still gonna experience that. You're still gonna be able to have access to like some parts of that for you, but you're not gonna get full access to it if you don't access all of yourself. Um, that's just, I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I don't know any other way to say that. And then other things with it that can happen when you kind of like reject your shadow self, is, you know, you kind of end up living in hypocrisy. There's lies and self-deceit. You have uncontrollable bursts of anger and rage. You emotionally and mentally manipulate other people. You can have greed and addictions, phobias, and obsessive compulsions. I know that all too well. I have OCD, so I really had to do a lot of shadow work to be able to get that under control. That's a huge one. Other issues that can just pop up as well is racism, sexism, homophobia, and other offensive behaviors. We're really gonna touch on that when I get into the collective part here really fast. Intense anxiety is another thing that'll pop up a lot, and that also will affect you physically. In case you didn't know, anxiety affects you so much physically. Um, you can end up with depression. I don't like the sexual perversion on there. I just put it on there because other people like to include it, but personally, I don't feel like there's really anything that's sexually perverted. If it works for you and your partner consents, go for it. You also have the issues of narcissism, chaotic relationships with others, self-loathing, self-absorption, and self-sabotage. So when you don't work on shadow work, like those are going to be a huge part of your life. And it's going to continue to be a cycle. It's going to continue to be a pattern until you decide to do the shadow work on why that's happening. Um, I have a whole chunk here about shadow work and the shadow and projection. I'm not going to go over that right now because I kind of briefly went over it with you earlier. Just kind of read that. It's going to give you a little bit more of a sense of what you might notice with projections and projecting to other people. I have more lists in here of benefits for shadow work. And then I do also have a list as well on in here of things to make sure that you contemplate before you start shadow work. So these are things that you need to make sure you go over before you really extensively start doing this is, like I said before in the very beginning, like, have you practiced self-love and do you have a base of self-love? I'm not saying it has to be this constant have like you're super amazing at it, but like, do you have at least a foundation, a little bit of self-love, a little bit of like self-confidence and things like that? you need some type of base there to be able to go back to. So making sure, like asking yourself that, are you really, really struggling with self-loathing right now? If that's a really, really big issue, again, I want you to get a little bit more self-love. Self-loathing can still be there. I'm not saying it has to completely disappear and you have to be like in this amazing mental health state. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't want that to be the absolute overwhelming thing that you're feeling right now. I want you to at least have a base of self-love when you walk into a shadow work session. Like, I don't want you going into a shadow work session already feeling self-loathing. And then are you prepared to make time for it? This is, like I said, this is super, super time consuming. Like, this is very time consuming, and this is not something that you dabble in and that you do every now and then and that you pick up and put down. Like, this is something that it is a consistent thing that ends up becoming a part of your practice. And then are you looking to just simply be validated, or are you looking to find truth? If you're looking to simply just be validated, shadow work's that's not what you're going to get out of this. If you're simply looking to go talk to your shadow self and be like, yep, you're right, that's not what this is. So if you're looking just for validation and you're not actually looking for truth, and you're not willing, like I said before, to be willing and open to receive whatever it is that comes to you, you're not ready yet. Do you have the ability to actually seek and enter a calm and neutral space? Do you have the ability to mentally enter a space like that? If you can't do that yet, we have to work on that first. Do you have the ability to understand that you are not your thoughts, that your thoughts are separate from who you are? If your identity is still absolutely wrapped up in you are what your thoughts are, and you don't have that type of emotional control yet, we need to work on that a little bit more before we do shadow work, because you're going to get very lost and you're going to get very overwhelmed, and it may end up having a negative impact on you, and I don't want that. Can you have the ability to practice self-compassion? Is that something that you actually do for yourself? A lot of people answer yes to that right away, but I really want you to think about that. Like, do you actually have self-compassion for yourself? Like, if you truly needed to like hug yourself when you really needed it, like, can you do that? So making sure that you have that ability, and that you're in a place to where that's something that you can mentally give yourself if you need to. And then, do you have the ability and the willingness to be able to record what you find? The reason why I say that is because, like, shadow works a lot. You might forget something. So just having the willingness to be able to record it so you can go back to it. Because your shadow self may want to go back to things. Your shadow self, you may be done with it, but your shadow self's not. So when you go back to dialogue with them next, they're going to bring it up again. So that's something as well to keep in mind. I have the archetypes in here again. Some of them are a little bit different. It's a little bit different versions of them for the shadow self. So there's another list that you can look at. I might have even put the narcissistic one. Oh, nope, I have neurotic. I did neurotic instead. Then I do have a couple things in here as well for what like a spiritual shadow is, which is a little bit different than your shadow self. The spiritual shadow is what exists within all life. So that's not the universe, that's not the collective consciousness. The spiritual shadow is like in other beings, like the plants, the animals, nature, like earth. That's the spiritual shadow as well. You can work with the spiritual shadow if you'd like. That is something that you can do shadow work with. That is an energy you can call on. That's definitely something you can do. I do it. It's the same concept as other shadow work. Just that is the intention. That is the space that you're entering. I have a lot of pages on the collective shadow. I really, 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 really want you guys to read this on your own, because I really want you to absorb it all. The reason why I have this in here is because this is something personally I feel like is absolutely massively lacking in the magic and spiritual community. We are not looking at the collective shadow. We are completely ignoring it. If we were doing collective shadow work, we would not be having so much racism, so much homophobia, so much misogynism. That's where all that sits. Everything that's going on, like in the United States, in the world globally, all this discord, all this chaos, everything that is dark and nasty, and all the atrocities that humans have ever done against each other, they sit in the collective shadow. Why we are not talking about this more in the spiritual community, and why we are not working with the collective shadow more, I don't know. I really, really don't know. But I really, really want you guys, and I really, really challenge you to want to be willing to do this and to work and do shadow work with the collective shadow, because by doing that, and meeting the collective shadow, if more of the collective starts doing that, we're going to be able to heal that collective more. And a lot of these global and national issues are going to not feel so intense, and we're going to start to have some healing. We're going to start to come forward as a collective. And this is going to get a little bit touchy. Like I said, if this is your path, I'm not judging, like I don't judge you. You can, like, everybody has their own path. But a lot of times when you hear phrases like focusing only on the positive and good vibes only and love and light only, and you attract what you attract the situation that you want, you manifest, like all of these things and these love and light onlys and live in love and light and only positive and things like that is making people not want to do their own shadow work. It's making people not want to do shadow work in the collective shadow. And our collective shadow is getting so out of balance because we're not going into it as a collective enough, that I really, really want to challenge to try to walk away from that. And this comes into the concept of duality. And that's why I kind of like brought this in. I wanted to talk about this as well, is some people look at duality as a separation thing, and they look at it as duality is the concept. And I have I have a quote in here on it. I think it's just a very Western view, and I disagree with it. And it says, duality is essentially a state of separation. It is the opposite of reality and is the cause of all suffering. Duality is a product of the mind, and the duality are essential. We split and we divide life into right and wrong, good and bad, pretty and ugly, holy and sinful, love and hate, and so forth. And as a result, our lives become centered around judgment, condemnation, and fear. To me, that's not duality. To me, that's actually the law of polarity. And that's actually something that's super, super different. So I feel like because we're choosing to look at duality as a collective like this, that's also why we're not looking at shadow work. And that's why we have this big push of love and light only. And we really shouldn't be touching anything with the dark or baneful. And by doing that, we're actually not experiencing duality. The way that I look at duality actually is a balance of understanding that everything has both dark and light energies to it. There is not a single thing, entity, person, situation, anything on this planet that can exist without both energies. It's literally just not possible. Like, something cannot exist without both positive and negative energies. It cannot exist without both masculine and feminine energies. That's just literally how the universe functions. So this is why like shadow work is so important, because it's this concept of duality. It's that dark side. It's that other half. It's that other version of ourselves that we need to bring forth, and we need to blend. We need to make as a whole. And that is how I see duality, is we blend the two to where we are always acknowledging that both of these aspects, both of these sides exist, and they both exist at the same time. And the reason why I also say this is because most people are also forgetting we live by this as above, so below, and they're also forgetting the other half of it. It's as within, so without. So this concept of duality is that balance. It is that everything exists together. It's that we have the dark and the light, and it needs to come together for a blending. We need to not be afraid of the shadow, of the dark, of the evil, of the sinful, of the hate. Like, I don't like using those words. That's why I have the quotation on them. But we need to be able to understand that, to actually fully live in duality. And like I said, to me, duality is the blending. It's not separating and being like, this is black, this is white. To me, duality is gray. It is understanding. It is accepting the fact that, like I said, those things exist in everything, even though sometimes we don't want to. In evil atrocity, there is some light to it. Here's my best example of that. If anybody else here has ever experienced your house burning down, I have. I've experienced my house burning down more than once. You would think there's no good to that. Absolutely nothing good can come. Like, there's no good to that. Your house burned down. Like, your house burnt down. Like, what possibly could good come from that? I actually see it as one of the biggest, best moments of my life, to be honest, because it burnt everything to the ground so that you can rebuild and you can regrow. It burnt everything down so that my life could become something completely different. It burnt everything down so that things could be removed that did not need to be there. They literally burnt to ash and were just gone. If you've ever looked after a wildfire, if you've ever looked at Hawaii after a volcano eruption and lava everywhere, like the regrowth afterwards and the new ecological system you get is so amazing. So like that's the example that's one example I guess that I have of like we may think that like there's evil, there's good, there's dark, there's light, this and this, but it's not. Everything has both of these to it. Everything has both of these to it. So that's why, again, like it's so important for you to work on your shadow self, so important for you to do this so that you can have that balance. Because I personally believe, as magical practitioners, like I said, you don't have to subscribe to this. This is what I have come to believe through my years of practice. We actually have a more bigger and higher obligation to live in duality than others because we choose to do this, because we choose to work with energies, and because we choose to manipulate energies. When you sit here and you only practice light magic, you only practice light things, you only do light things, you don't do the shadow work, you only focus on love and light, you are actually putting imbalance into the universe. You are causing more imbalance and more discord into the universe because you are not matching both energies. You are literally only representing one. And then you are putting more of that out than, so that has to make up somewhere. Like if you put constant love and light out, that energy has to be made up somewhere. It has to come somewhere else in the universe. There has to be that balance. There's always that pull, that tug and war, like that balance. And we're always striving to meet that balance. And you meet that in that duality. You meet that in understanding your shadow self and your full authentic self to its full capability. The last thing that I think that I wanted to touch here was just at the end, I kind of wanted to go over when it comes to shadow work, just making sure like that you're in, like I said, you're in sacred space, you're in the intention. That will look different for everybody. But for example, like my sacred space includes incense, it includes candles, it includes at times I call and I invoke deities even when I'm doing shadow work. Sometimes I invoke other entities. I've had demons with me when I'm doing shadow work. I've had fae with me when I'm doing shadow work. I not yet, but I'm gonna try a jinn here soon. My relationship with my jinn is not quite strong enough yet, but I will be doing that soon. But so like that is like I pull in my archetype energy. So like whatever energy you want with you, if you want it, you don't have to have any energy with you. You can literally just go and, like I said, dialogue with your shadow self. So just make sure that you're setting that space how you want that sacred space to be, and you are going into that with very much intention. Make sure you call your energy to you. However you do that, everybody has different methods and different ways to do that. Make sure that your magical space, your magical energy, your intention is with you, and then you reach out to your shadow self. Like I said, people do it differently. Some will speak out loud to them. Some will think. Some will write to them. Some will simply just invite them. Sometimes I do prayer. Sometimes I do an invocation. Sometimes I literally just sit in absolute silence and I wait for my shadow self to show up. Because I use the word own, but own as in like pride and like balance and things. But like I don't possess my shadow self. Like I don't get to demand. I don't get to say like you are showing up now and this is what we're talking about. This is what's going on. And so and then you, like I said, make sure that you meet your shadow self, make sure you're completely open to what they want to receive, what they want to send to you. Make sure you are open to what to receive and you sit with them as long as they need. That is also why I say make sure that you have the time. You don't get to cut them off. Make sure that you sit with them until they tell you that they are done. And then you get to close that container, you get to close that space, however it is that you do that. If you called something in, make sure you give gratitude, you release them, and you thank them. If it's just you, I recommend sitting in meditation by yourself for about 5 minutes so that you can decompress before you walk away from shadow work. And then do all the journaling that you need to do. Okay. I think that's all. I think that's all that I have. We have any questions? I know that I went over a lot. you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, or if you don't have questions, because I threw a lot of information at you, I totally get that too. Is for the cold shadow self. What do you mean by cold? You mean by like distant and not wanting to discuss with you at all? Do I have a psychology? I do not have a psychology degree. I am literally all self-taught. I have studied underneath people who have had psychology degrees. And then I personally myself went through, I just completed actually a year-long skills training program in dialectical behavior therapy. So I literally just went through hundreds of hours of training in therapy myself on that. And then I've also gone through trauma exposure therapy and a bunch of other things. But no, I do not have a psychology degree. I am literally all self-taught. I love to study. Love to study. It's one of my favorite things. The concept of collective work is really interesting. I like that. Yes, I love doing collective work. I love it. I do a lot of work in my community personally. I'm a political organizer for 2 organizations for reproductive health and abortion rights. So that's something like I find when I do collective shadow work before I go and do those things, I have much more positive interactions with people. I have people that are much more willing to get active in their community, much more willing to help with their community. They feel stronger and more connected to their community. So that's another reason why I super love to do it. And I always do it before I do community events because I want to be able to have that connection. Yay! I love that they loved it. Oh, that makes me so happy. Yay! Okay. Thanks so much for that. You're super, super, super welcome. Did I miss anything? Okay, Tanya, I will direct message you because I want to know exactly what you mean by that so that I can answer that the best for you. So I will direct message you. You're a student, right? I know you're a student. You're definitely a student. I know I can find you. Okay. Okay. And then did I see? Okay, somebody has a question. Okay, if you want to ask your question out loud or put it in the chat, you can, because I see you direct messaged me. Otherwise, if you want to direct message me, you can direct message me your question.
No, I don't mind asking it now. It was just a little too much to type, and that was my way of kind of raising my hand.
No, you are totally fine.
Earlier, my earpiece died. I'm sorry. So you were saying something really profound, and I wanted to write it down, and I had to get my other earpiece. But you're saying something to the fact of there's like 4 ways of moving forward on something, and you named
problem
4.
solving. Problem
Okay.
solving. Yes. So there are literally only 4 ways to problem solve in life. There are literally only 4 ways that you can react to things, and only 4 ways that you can handle one. One is literally solving the problem. So with just if it can be solved, solve the problem. The other one is changing how you feel about the situation and how you feel about the problem. So that has nothing to do with anybody else. It's you literally deciding that you are going to change how you feel, how you react, and how you radically accept that situation. The other one is simply leaving it if it's possible. Like if that problem, like if the other 2 options aren't an option, just literally simply leaving and not being a part of that situation, that problem anymore. And then the fourth one option is literally doing nothing and staying miserable. So those are the 4 choices that you have when it comes to dealing with anything in life.
Thank you so much.
You are super welcome. Any other questions?
Tell her what's going
on. Okay, fabulous. So if you guys do come think of anything, you can message me in the DiviNation chat, or you can message me in this classroom chat, because I do have that set up for you guys, so you can get a hold of me whenever you want. Did you post a Word version anywhere? I don't know if I did. So when I'm at work tonight, I get to work at 10:30, so probably about midnight, I can get a Word version posted for you. Because when I get to work, I have I have some casework I have to do with my residents, and then once I'm done with that, I can do that. Because yeah, I work at a domestic violence shelter, so I've got a lot of casework I have to catch up on. But I will get that done. I will do that tonight. Okay, any other questions besides that? Thank you. I super love that you loved it. I love it. I love it. And I love creating these study guides. So I hope you like them and I hope they're helpful. And I hope they have enough information in them. Sometimes I feel like I need to make them longer, but yay, I love that you guys love them. Okay, so thank you guys so much for being here with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And if you haven't been to one of my Dark Goddess devotional classes, come on Sunday. I'm going to be introducing you guys to Lilith. She's a super, super, super big deity. So I really hope that she shows up for all of you guys in an amazing way. Other than that, have a good night, guys. What time? 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm in Central Standard Time. So it's 2 p.m. And I'm doing it for 3 hours this week instead of 2 because I had to cancel last week. So it's going to be from 2 to 5. Awesome. Have a good night, everybody.